If you've been looking for one of those books that just gets you, a book that people are saying makes them genuinely cry, then smile, then immediately call it a lifetime favorite, you've probably heard about Theo of Golden.
You really have. This novel by Alan Levi, it's become this kind of quiet phenomenon. It's earning this really fierce devotion for its message.
A message of radical, intentional kindness.
Exactly. And it's so rare for a work of literary fiction to land with this kind of immediate, profound emotional weight. We aren't just talking about a good story here.
No, it feels more like an aspirational framework for living.
That's a great way to put it.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get into the source material that defines this story. We want to understand the enigma of the character, Theo, this mysterious man in Golden, Georgia.
And the equally fascinating winding path of his creator, Alan Levi.
Right. We've pulled from his notes, from detailed reviews, and several really intimate author interviews to try and unpack the magic.
And I think to understand the book's power, you absolutely have to look at the man who wrote it. This novel is this unique synthesis, a blend of art and kindness and, well, deep reflection on these huge themes.
Like presence and attentiveness.
And finding value, even redemptive value, in profound sadness. We're going to explore how Levi's really nonlinear background didn't just inspire the story, it actually gave him the tools to tell it.
Okay, so let's start with the author's career, because it is truly remarkable. I mean, when you look at the sequence of jobs, it just looks haphazard.
He really does.
But Levi himself saw a symmetry to it. He said he was always using words, spoken, written, or sung, to tell stories and persuade people.
Exactly. And the formal foundation for that was laid right in his home state of Georgia. He got an English degree in 1978 and then right after, a law degree in 1980 from the University of Georgia.
And I love this detail. It feels so human. He said he originally chose to be an English major, mostly to avoid taking math classes.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
It just seems like his path was guided less by some grand plan and more by these immediate practical choices.
Well, he spent the next 10 years practicing law, mostly as a litigator. And if you think about what a litigator does, you have to observe people meticulously, structure arguments, use language with absolute precision.
That skill set.
That skill set, that precision and observation, you can see it so clearly in the tight narrative of Theo of Golden.
But then comes this first huge pivot, a really unusual one. Around 1989, 1990, he just leaves the law.
Great.
He moves to Scotland and gets a master's degree studying Scottish fiction at the University of Edinburgh.
I mean, think about the courage that takes. To trade the stability of closing arguments for the, uncertainty of literary study.
And the restlessness didn't stop there. He comes back and then transitions again.
Around 1996, he spends the better part of the next 2 decades as a full-time traveling singer-songwriter.
He released over 20 albums.
Yeah, and think about that craft transfer. The litigator gave him precision, but the songwriter gave him that economy of narrative, how to distill a huge, complex emotion into something concise and memorable.
And then we hit the turning point, the event that I think directly shaped the soul of this book, the influence of profound, sustained grief.
Yes. In 2011, Levi just dropped everything, all professional work, the music, the law, everything, to become the full-time caregiver for his younger brother, Gary,
who he called his best friend and his mentor.
Gary had been diagnosed with glioblastoma, and Levi spent this incredibly intensive year caring for him. Gary passed away exactly 365 days after his diagnosis.
And despite the crushing difficulty of that year, Levi has said, and I'm quoting here, that it was the best year of his life, bar none.
That statement, that is the philosophical heart of this book. It's this realization that intense suffering and intentional presence, they aren't mutually exclusive. That year of radical selflessness became the wellspring for Theo's entire worldview.
And just when you think his career path might finally stabilize, he makes one more surprising detour.
Of course he does.
While he's processing all that grief and exhaustion, he gets convinced by the local sheriff and his family to run for office. He ends up serving as a judge for an unexpired term for a couple of years.
The final puzzle piece. That judgeship must have exposed him to a whole new spectrum of community struggles, raw material, really, for understanding the hardship that Theo later tries to alleviate in the book.
So after all that mastering precision in law, economy in music, navigating grief as a caretaker, and witnessing struggle as a judge, how did that immense experience finally crystallize into this quiet, simple idea for a novel?
Well, it started with a place, not a person.
Yeah.
After he left the judgeship, he was visiting this familiar coffee shop, the one that becomes the Chalice in the book.
Okay.
And he was just struck by this series of 92 pencil portraits on the walls made by his artist friend.
And the idea just hit him. What if he bought them all and found the people in the portraits?
Exactly. He actually went home and bought 5 of them right then just to sit with the idea. But what's really key here is the intention behind the writing. Levi wrote Theo of Golden during the COVID shutdown, mostly as a personal exercise. He wasn't aiming for the bestseller list. He just wanted to see if he still had the stamina to finish a big piece of fiction.
He genuinely thought it would never be published. He told interviewers he planned to just keep the manuscript in a drawer, thinking maybe he'd print one copy to present at the pearly gates as, like, evidence of his faith.
Can you imagine? I mean, the only reason we have this book is because he was forced to trust other people.
His 5 friends.
His 5 lifelong friends. They read the draft and were so emphatic, they basically demanded he publish it. They forced him to override his own self-doubt.
So it gets published. And the setup is pretty simple. Theo, an elderly, enigmatic Portuguese man, shows up in this fictional town, Golden, Georgia. He decides to buy all 92 of these pencil portraits from an artist named Asher Glisson.
And then he starts on this secret mission, making what he calls bestowals to the people in the portraits. He's trying to change their lives through connection and just radical generosity.
So the mystery is set up right away. Why is this wealthy, anonymous man doing this in this specific small town, one person at a time, and with so much secrecy?
He just moves through the town like this ancient soul, observing everything but revealing nothing about himself.
That gets us to the real engine of the story. It's not the plot, really. It's Theo's philosophy of presence. Let's dive into that because that's where the core lesson is.
It is, and it starts with the rejection of efficiency.
What do you mean by that?
Well, his associate, Mrs. Gidley, she suggests optimizing the giving, do the bestowals efficiently, maybe a big announcement or an event.
The logical thing to do.
The logical thing. And Theo rejects it completely. He insists on doing them in person, privately, one by one. The goal wasn't just to transfer resources, it was about personal connection.
And that required just intense attentiveness. We see him practicing it, noticing people's faces, historical markers, the sound of music, changes in nature. He uses those observations as his, data points for generosity.
And you see the practical applications. He'd buy Christmas gifts for friends based on something they mentioned offhandedly months earlier.
Right.
Or, more profoundly, his attentiveness to the family of Kendrick Whitaker.
Yeah, Kendrick was under this immense financial pressure because of his daughter Lamesha's medical condition.
And Theo didn't just write a check. He noticed the totality of their struggle and discreetly secured financial support and the medical care she needed. His gift wasn't money, it was attention, coupled with action.
He also specialized in these really unexpected connections, like Ellen, the unhoused, mentally ill woman.
Yes.
His bestowal to her wasn't just cash, it was her portrait, plus the tools and resources she needed to develop her own art, which eventually gave her dignity and a small business. He didn't fix her, he equipped her.
And this brings us to that huge theme that connects right back to Levi's experience with his brother, the concept of good sadness.
The good sadness. What exactly is that?
Theo believed that sadness is rarely stupid,
Right.
that it is all trying to tell us something very important.
So it's a signpost.
It's a signpost pointing toward truth and the need for presence. Theo believed when we try to medicate or just rush past sadness, we miss the vital information it contains about what we value or what's been broken.
So by accepting it, you validate the injury. You honor what was lost.
Exactly. And that refusal to just dismiss pain is central to the novel's whole perspective on healing.
And what makes Theo work as a character, what keeps him from being this, saccharine saint, is that he lives in a genuinely difficult world.
Yeah, Levi was very aware of that risk.
He intentionally sets Theo's goodness against this backdrop of real gut-wrenching pain. Children killed in accidents, a drunk driver, a golf ball, crippling injuries. The trauma of a Vietnam vet like Tony Wilcox.
That painful contrast is what gives Theo's actions their weight, their profound weight.
The story then builds to this dramatic, heartbreaking climax that is anything but saccharine.
Not at all. Late one night, Theo intervenes when 3 drunk men attack Ellen and Simone Lavoie, the cello student.
He's trying to help, trying to get the police, and in his haste, he leans too far over the balcony railing of his apartment.
And he loses his balance. He falls to his death on the sidewalk below.
It's a tragic, sacrificial end. But that sacrifice is what unlocks the entire mystery.
It does. The police investigation that follows finally reveals Theo's true identity, which he had so meticulously concealed.
And the truth is just stunning. Theo was actually Gamas Theophilus Zilabes, known professionally as Zila.
A globally renowned Portuguese-American artist and entrepreneur. His work hung in major galleries all over the world. He had chosen complete anonymity after a catastrophic event in his life.
The catastrophe being the death of his wife and his 10-year-old daughter, Tita.
Killed in a car accident in France back in 1987. That loss just destroyed him, and it led him to abandon his entire career and live reclusively as Theo.
So his presence in Golden was purposeful. But the final revelation, the one that connects the whole story, Asher Glisson, the local artist whose portraits Theo was buying.
He's revealed to be Theo's son.
That is just what a gut punch.
It's the ultimate design feature of the whole narrative. Decades earlier, Theo and Asher's mother, Gammy, they were artists studying in Madrid. When she got pregnant, she married another man back home and wrote to Theo, begging him to never contact them.
So Theo came to Golden specifically to meet the son he'd only ever known about in the abstract.
Yes, his entire mission of radical generosity was built around finally being present in his son's community.
That level of narrative architecture is incredible, especially when you learn about Levi's writing process.
Oh, yeah. He described it as driving with dim headlights through fog, just writing and finding the story as he went. No outline.
He said that frustration led him to realize he actually prefers to be a story designer. He wants to know the big beats ahead of time.
And that story designer approach seems to be guiding his next projects. He mentioned the book he originally wanted to write before Theo.
Historical fiction about Malchus.
The man whose ear Jesus healed. He wonders how that one momentary meeting of the eyes haunted Malchus for the rest of his life. It's that same theme, finding a profound significance in small, personal encounters.
And more immediately, he's writing a spin-off focused on Ellen, the unhoused artist.
Right. Starting 3 years after Theo's death, it will use flashbacks to fill in her history and her unique friendship with Theo.
So if we circle back to the book's reception, that high rating, 4.66 stars on Goodreads, that's undeniable proof of its impact.
Absolutely. The focus on aspiration clearly resonated deeply with tens of thousands of readers. So many of them describe being moved to tears.
But, for a balanced view, we should look at the counter-critiques, too. Some readers felt it was a little preachy in its philosophical parts.
Sure. Or that the middle section lacked plot propulsion, that it was, and this is a quote, bloated with brilliantly beautiful exposition.
Basically, they wanted the economy of his songs, but got the reflective depth of his post-caretaking philosophy.
And Levi's answer to that is so important. He said he writes to bless people and bring something good into the world. He knew people told him books needed to be political or angry to sell, but he refused. He chose aspiration over cynicism.
And that choice brings us right back to the ultimate challenge Levi puts to the reader through Theo's life. How can we do good and bestow kindness with the resources we already have?
It all hinges on his idea of accumulated wealth. And he challenges us to look beyond just cash. Do we have accumulated wealth, time, talent, a unique life experience, hospitality that is just sitting idle?
That isn't being put to compassionate use.
Exactly. Theo's life, even with its tragic end, is offered as a genuine model for redirecting those resources toward helping others right now. It's a powerful call for radical intentionality.
Theo was always aware that the real challenge of living well isn't about one grand public gesture.
No, it's the quiet, persistent, deeply attentive, one-at-a-time practice of intentionality in every single part of your life.
So, as you reflect on this deep dive into Alan Levi's journey and Theo's philosophy, maybe consider that takeaway of presence. If you adopted Theo's generosity of time and attention, what small, often missed detail in your own life would suddenly become your signpost for action?
Remember that you possess a unique form of accumulated wealth that only you can bestow. The question is, are you ready to put that time, talent, and treasure to compassionate use?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope we've given you something meaningful and aspirational to ponder.
Until next time.